Hi, friends. This is Adam Shoemaker, rector at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in downtown Charleston, back for another edition of Rector's Corner. And given my transition, my final edition of Rector's Corner, and I will say more about that towards the end of this interview. But I'm very happy to have with me today Father Bill Coyne, who, as of May 1st, begins again as the interim rector of St. Stephen's. He was interim rector before I arrived. Bill, thank you for being on. I know your calendar is filling up, but I wanted to begin by asking you what has called you back to St. Stephen's. You've obviously done this before. Just would love to hear your reflections on that.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you for the invitation to be with you for this final Rector's Corner. I would say my memory is back in late February, early March, when it looked like Father Will would be called to St. James on James Island. And Adam, you were announced as one of the finalists for the April ballot in Long Island. The idea was floated, and I was very receptive to the challenge of serving once again as the interim rector, if needed, if needed. And so a message went out to the parish on March 6th that indeed Will was chosen to be the next rector of St. James. And with the Long Island election still to come on April 18th, the thinking was it would reassure the St. Stephen's faithful that a contingency plan with me serving as the interim rector and the Reverend Laura Rizak secured for a period of time to assist at the 9 a.m. family-friendly Eucharist would offer assurance that St. Stephen's was prepared no matter what the outcome. So this contingency plan had the blessing of the bishop, the vestry, and once it was announced, various people saying to me on Sunday mornings, to use a baseball metaphor, thanks for warming up in the bullpen. But St. Stephen's, it's a place and people that I love. I grew to love them deeply starting in 2015 when I was called to be the interim the first time. St. Stephen's has a bedrock mission I believe in, a house of prayer for all people. And I'd like to see St. Stephen's go from strength to strength. So putting all those things together, for me, it felt like the right invitation to come back and do this work, and I'm thrilled about it.
Well, thank you so much, Bill, for saying yes, because I do think it's wonderful to use another sports metaphor, pass the baton back to you as I begin my transition to Long Island. And sticking with the notion of your role as an interim rector, for those who perhaps have not had that experience before, can you describe what that role entails?
Sure, thank you. Part of my listening and training and experience has been involved with doing a lot of deep reading and going to conferences sponsored by the Alban Institute, which really was an Episcopal think tank, for lack of a better word, that offered real life, practical, both solutions and ideas for how to engage in various parts of life of ministry. And they really focused on the developmental tasks of the interim period, that time between settled full-time rectors, which St. Stephen's will be entering with your move to the Diocese of Long Island and being their ninth bishop. So the interim period is seen as a prime time for renewal and re-energizing the parish in its life and mission. And the Alban Institute set out five hallmarks or markers for looking at what this interim ministry might look like. I actually shared these with the vestry back in 2015 as I began, and we put them on the agenda as a reminder for every vestry meeting during that 2-year interim time. And it's beyond maintaining effective ministry during the period, but that the vestry and the interim rector shall work together to prepare for a healthy transition to the next rectorship. And there were specific tasks to be addressed, and here's what they are. Number one, coming to an understanding of the parish's history and relationship with its previous rectors. So you really voice and talk about and surface what was our history like? What are some of the stories? What are some of the landmarks along the way for not only Adam, your time as our rector, but maybe going back a few years and going back to those seminal days when the matriarchs and patriarchs of St. Stephen's listened and engaged in conversation with the bishop at that time to the invitation to become an integrated parish. The neighborhood was changing, the city was changing, and could St. Stephen's see as part of its future the opportunity to welcome Anglos into what was a predominantly African American congregation? And so that part of the history, we want to look at that and be informed by that because it's part of who we are. And tightly connected with that is discovering the parish's identity, what its dreams of being and doing apart from the clergy leadership. You know, what's the core identity of St. Stephen's? I particularly think it's carved right into the building, a house of prayer for all people.
Absolutely.
And what does that look like? How do we incarnate that for this new day and going forward? But that to me, when I first arrived in 2015, was an easy thing to say. That's who we are. That's what we're about. And coincidentally, in 2015, Bishop Michael Curry was just elected our new presiding bishop at that point, and his for opening remarks talked about being a house of prayer for all people, for the entire Episcopal Church. So I thought, we're on the same page here. This is really an important part of our identity and who we are and who we want to include. Y'all is everybody. It's everybody. A third point is to embrace the shifts in leadership roles that naturally evolve in times of transition, allowing new leaders to come to the fore constructively. So not only do you deal or look at your identity and purpose, but also issues of leadership. And you never want to say, well, the leadership team we have now is perfect, let's never change it. But to say, people and situations and times change and new leaders emerge and former leaders are thanked and consulted and brought into conversations, but you really focus on leadership development during this interim time. A fourth thing is renewing and reworking relationships with the diocese. We are an Episcopal church, so that each of us may be a more effective resource and support to the other. I want to make sure our ties with Bishop Ruth and her staff, the wider church like our deanery and things like Dawson Convention, that we at St. Stephen's have our place at the table and that we engage and constructively work together and be a resource with one another. The final thing, the final step that the Alban Institute recommended for interim periods is building commitment to the leadership of the new rector in order to be prepared to move into the future with openness to new possibilities. That sense of really setting the table, preparing the way, getting things all lined up, teed up for the new rector, and to have a very smooth handoff and transition. That's the goal, not only for me, but for the entire leadership team.
Yeah, it's so important having served as a rector twice in two different dioceses that the work of the interim period is so important to lay the foundation so that as a rector coming in, you feel like you're ready then to truly move forward with the congregation. I know that as interim rector, Bill, you will be working most closely with the vestry, the elected leadership of our congregation. But I wonder in this interim season, what can the rest of the congregation expect, how they will be engaged in this process?
It's a great question, Adam. There is this overall or overarching goal to maintain the effective ministry that you not only supported and grew and as have us in a healthy and mission-focused place, but to maintain that and to work with the lay leaders and the staff members to say, the bar is set high for St. Stephen's. We have grown. God has blessed us. We have a bright future ahead of us. Let's keep doing the work that God has entrusted to us. So maintain effective ministry. Uh, how long might this last? My best guess is that it might be a 12 to 15 month interim. My goal is not to in any way slow down the search process or securing our next full-time rector, but just seeing how the process unfolds and the time it takes. I'm guessing it's 12 to 15 months. The last time it was a full 2 years. And Bishop von Rosenberg, our provisional bishop at that time, thought it would take 2 years. It seemed like there was enough fundamental developmental work to do that time period was spot on, and we used the entire 2 years. And another thing we can do in this interim season is to experiment with a few things. Not that we do things that we don't recognize St. Stephen's or who we are or what our core things are about, but we don't want to fall into the trap. We've always done it this way, whatever it is, whatever this way might be. But we want to say we're still open to the movement of the Spirit, to whatever God may have for us, to be able to respond to new opportunities. The context for ministry might shift in the city of Charleston or in our local area. We want to be able to step up and respond as best we can as the people of God. I also want to make sure we understand our history, the sacred story of St. Stephen's. What does it mean to be at House of Prayer for All People? What does it mean to have that crooked cross at the top of our building that Hugo arranged for us in 1989? And the final thing I would say is to continue to build capacitated leaders and continue our mission focus. This is a special place. And again, I've grown to love it and want to be a good steward of both who we have been, who God is calling us to be today, and who God is leading us to be in the future.
Another question, Bill, that I think folks are probably wondering is what is the process going to look like to search for St. Stephen's new rector? I believe absolutely that St. Stephen should be well poised to move from strength to attract well qualified candidates. But can you talk to those listening in about what they can expect as we begin to search for my successor?
Yes. And part of that is working hand in hand with Bishop Ruth and her office and the diocese. The Reverend Canon Phil Linder, who serves as the canon to the ordinary on the bishop's staff and is our transition ministry officer, will actually be with the vestry at the June meeting. And I've also invited him to come on Sunday morning, June 21st, to outline how the search process unfolds in the Diocese of South Carolina. So on that Sunday morning, Canon Linder will preach at the 11 o'clock service. We'll gather in Founders Hall, all who wish to hear him sort of outline, here's what this process looks like for congregations, and whatever specific parts for St. Stephen's that he wants to highlight, he can do that. But my experience in working with many congregations tells me this about the search process. You need to allow some breathing space. That once, Adam, your final day has come and you turn over the keys and turn out the lights in the rector's office and we all have a good goodbye with you, you need to allow the system, the congregation, to breathe a little bit, to just take some time. Just say, yes, we had a wonderful 9 years with Adam. Take some time and space, and then we can begin sorting through and begin that search process. You don't want to say, okay, Adam left last night, 8 o'clock the next morning, we're furiously running around doing things. You have to let things breathe, take some time and allow some space for things to organically check in. Where are we? Who are we? What's going on? What's the next step? But at the appropriate time, the vestry will appoint a search committee. We'll commission them on a Sunday morning, in the name of God, in the name of this parish, do this work on our behalf and on behalf of the vestry. And we'll regularly pray for that search committee as they do and undertake this ministry. Parish profile is built that captures in writing or on a web page or in as many different platforms as we can who we are, what our hopes and dreams are for the future, and what are the qualities we're looking for in the next full-time rector. And then a position open notice goes out across the church describing St. Stephen's and the strong St. Stephen's that it is. Again, we're in a much healthier place. We've grown tremendously since 2017, Adam, when you began. And I believe we will get a strong pool of candidates who will see this notice, who will see this opportunity, this opening of a strong parish life in the city of Charleston. And they'll say, I wonder if God might be calling me to that. And so we'll receive those names through the bishop's office. And then the search committee, keeping their role as, once they have those names, a mode of radio silence, of keeping appropriate confidentiality as they sort and sift and pray and weigh. And then finally to begin interviewing potential candidates, probably through Zoom and ultimately at the end of the process in person. To invite people to come and see the parish, see the property, see some of the leadership, both the search committee and perhaps vestry members, not to preach in front of the congregation. That's not what we do. Congregational churches are known for doing that, to have a candidate come in and preach before the entire congregation. Our work is done by the search committee to, again, do that sifting and praying and discerning. They're commissioned by the vestry. They come back to the vestry and say, we have done our work. We have said our prayers. We have come humbly before you, vestry, with this name. And they'll present the name and the person and the background and the story, how it fits with St. Stephen's, and then say to the vestry, this is who we recommend that you call, that you invite to be our next rector. But we don't have a new rector until the vestry does, in fact, call someone. We don't want the word to go out, well, the search committee's done, the call's been issued, we're all done. You have to have a letter of agreement. The diocese will provide a template for here is for a settled full-time rector. Here's what a letter of agreement looks like. The vestry will help draft that, negotiate with the final candidate, the final person chosen. Make sure that letter of agreement is signed by all parties, the bishop's office included. And then it's publicly announced that here and wherever that priest is serving concurrently, that we have a new call. And just as Adam, you wrote a letter saying you had been called to Long Island for all of us at St. Stephen's, that person will probably write a letter and announce to their congregation that they've been called to St. Stephen's in Charleston. They move to Charleston, and we have a joyous first Sunday together.
Yeah, that's great. And for folks listening in, it is important to know that, after the call has come out, there will be another transition, another time of waiting as that individual and their family relocates themselves, and a date will be settled for that first Sunday. And I will certainly be praying with and for you from Long Island. Lastly, Bill, I just wanted to ask, for those who have questions now or along the way, what's the best way for people to reach out?
Great question. Great question. Both Reverend Julia and I will be working 3/4 time. So that would equal or add up to 1.5 priest coverage, plus Deacon Jim as our clergy team. And it's a little less staff, clergy staff, than we've been accustomed to in our recent configurations. But we want to make sure that St. Stephen's knows you have our full attention and commitment. We're open for questions and conversations about both what's going on and where are we going. So I think as your clergy, we are a good place to start. But our wardens and vestry are also committed to communicating with the parish at the highest level. They are an integral part of the transition team. I will lean into their wisdom and stewardship of the mission and ministry that is uniquely St. Stephen's. And also, I'm confident that our longest serving staff members, Amanda Stevens, our Director of Communications and Operations, and Wayne Helmley, our Director of Music and Organist, can answer questions and give witness to our common life together. So I believe, Adam, you are handing over not just to me or only to me, but to a team committed to upholding the high standard of mission engagement and faithful witness that you have embodied as our rector for 9 years. And I know you will carry that to Long Island. May the Lord bless you and keep you, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bill. It makes me feel like I'm leaving St. Stephen's in good, solid hands, not just with your leadership, but as you have said, with our wonderful staff and vestry, all of our lay leaders, and indeed, friends, all of you listening in who constitute a part of St. Stephen's. I believe that the congregation is well situated to navigate this transition and move forward in faith with your next rector when that time comes. This interview will be coming out just prior to my final three Sundays at St. Stephen's. We do have some events I would like to remind you of. On May the 10th, our diocesan bishop, Ruth Woodliff Stanley, will be visiting the parish for the 11 a.m. service. She will be the preacher and celebrant. We'll have baptisms, confirmations, receptions, and reaffirmations of faith. So please do mark your calendars for that. And then my final weekend at St. Stephen's will be the weekend of Pentecost. On May the 23rd, there is a Three Churches United event at Historic Calvary. Beginning at noon, we'll be commemorating the Emmanuel 9. We're nearing that anniversary on the calendar. And then there will be a reception following to mark my time in Charleston. It's open to the whole diocese. I will be the preacher and celebrant. And then I also will be the preacher and celebrant the following day at St. Stephen's, of course, the day of Pentecost, May the 24th. So I hope to see many of you there. Please continue to pray for me as I continue to pray for all of you. And as I said at the outset, this is obviously my final Rector's Corner. I was saying to Father Bill before we came on, I believe I've been doing this now for 5 to 6 years. We started this during the COVID-19 pandemic as another way to remain in touch with the congregation. It's been a pleasure for me to interview so many people from within our congregation and in our wider community. And who knows, perhaps this might be something that the next rector chooses to carry forward in some format. But it's been a pleasure for me to do, and I hope it's been interesting for all of you as listeners. So hopefully I will see many of you soon. Until that time, friends, be safe, be well, and you keep the faith. Take care. Thank you, Bill, for your time.
Thank you, Adam. God bless.